Nobody has more respect for women than I do. Nobody.
Hillary Clinton wants to abolish it, believe me. She wants to abolish our Second Amendment.
I think they didn't deny it. I don't think anybody denied it.
Other presidents did not call. They'd write letters, and some presidents didn't do anything.
Many people have come out and said I'm right.
You really do have to ask yourself, where does it stop?
Hello and welcome to Fallacious Trump, the podcast where we use the insane ramblings of a grown man who's afraid of the rain to explain logical fallacies. I'm your host, Jim.
And I'm your other host, Mark. A logical fallacy is an error in reasoning that results in bad or invalid arguments. The logical fallacy we're looking at this week is post hoc ergo propter hoc, also known as butterfly logic, confusing correlation and causation, and false cause.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to take a break from explaining the logical fallacy because we have a special guest to explain it this week, who is our greatest living president.
Aha.
USA Today asks you why you don't spend more time campaigning in Texas, and you say it's because you don't look good in funny hats.
It was big hats.
What difference does it make?
It makes a difference.
The point is we got whomped in Texas.
We got whomped in Texas twice.
We got whomped in the primary, and we got whomped in November.
I think I was there.
And it was avoidable, sir.
CJ, on your tombstone, it's going to read post hoc ergo propter hoc.
Okay, but none of my visitors are going to be able to understand my tombstone.
27 lawyers in the room. Anybody know post hoc ergo propter hoc? Josh?
Post, after hoc, ergo, therefore, after hoc, therefore, something else hoc.
Thank you. Next.
Well, if I got more credit on the 443 thing.
Leo.
After it, therefore, because of it.
After it, therefore, because of it. It means one thing follows the other, therefore it was caused by the other. But it's not always true. In fact, it's hardly ever true. We did not lose Texas because of the hat joke. Do you know when we lost Texas?
When you learn to speak Latin?
Go figure.
So,
there he is.
As Jed Bartlett helpfully explains there, post hoc ergo propter hoc means after it, therefore, because of it, and it is about confusing correlation with causation. It's about thinking that just because something happens and then another thing happens, then the second thing was caused by the first thing.
Okay, yep.
And as he said, it's often not true. So,
right.
But it's you can see why people would make that mistake, and it's also quite easy to fool people by pointing out the juxtaposition of these two things and implying a link, even if you're not directly stating that one follows the other. So in our first example from Trump, he tweeted in January of this year, he said, "Since taking office, I have been very strict on commercial aviation. Good news, it was just reported that there were 0 deaths in 2017, the best and safest year on record."
Okay. Yeah, all down to him.
So Trump is taking credit for the lack of planes crashing, which is kind of amazing.
Yeah.
It's especially amazing given that the increase in safety over the last couple of decades in air travel has been largely due to increased regulation, which is what Trump is against. Republicans against, because it costs companies money, and it is because of the investment and the regulation that the airline industry has undergone. That is why the last fatal crash of a US passenger plane was in 2009, and there have been very few plane crashes compared to going back in history. You know, it used to happen a lot more than it happens now. Yeah. Also, he didn't actually really do anything that would improve safety on airlines at all. The only things he did that had anything to do with air traffic or airline industry were to ban laptops for travellers from the Middle East, which was quickly rescinded. They didn't keep that around for long. He proposed turning air traffic control into a for-profit industry, which didn't ever even get through the House. Mm-hmm. And he didn't appoint a new FAA administrator or a nominee for the vacant seat on the National Transport Safety Board when those came up. So unlikely that he had much of a positive effect on air safety. No.
Given that those latter two were probably very key to the continuing and safety and the improvement of the safety. Yeah, he kind of cast himself.
Probably would have, gone in the right direction.
He kind of cast himself as Superman, and he single-handedly has kept all the aeroplanes safely aloft. You know, it's all
because he's been very strict. In some unknown way. On commercial aviation.
Yeah, I know, it is odd, isn't it? It's because the whole thing it tends to be a sort of general embracing of the direction of things, saying, oh, yeah, well, because of all these things happening in the world, because they've happened after I took office, therefore I'm responsible for it.
Absolutely. In a very broad sense, it's true of all of the stuff that he talks about, the economy and unemployment figures and things like that, because the economy was on an upward trajectory during the last few years of Obama's presidency, and unemployment was on a downward trajectory, again, from like 2010 through to 2016. And they have continued largely on the trajectories that they were on. They haven't changed. They haven't got more impressive or better. They've just kept going in the direction they were going. Yeah. And of course, because that continuation has happened since Trump came into office, he says, well, it's because of me. But the suggestion that it wouldn't have continued if he wasn't there is kind of nonsense.
Yeah. And it's like...
There's no evidence for it, at least.
It makes me think of All Things Bright and Beautiful. That's the song, all things bright and beautiful, all creatures great and small, and it's all laid at the hands of the Supreme Being. So this is which kind of neatly glosses over. There was a Monty Python version of it called All Things Dull and Ugly, because if he's responsible for everything, he's responsible for the horrific squirting pustular things as well. And in the same way, you could kind of say to Trump, okay, if you've been responsible for everything that's happened since you took office, what about the increasing unemployment amongst your blue-collar workers? What about the
factory closures due to the tariffs? And
he's only going to put himself as the cause of good things because,
But he is happy to make a link between bad things and the president who is currently in office, so long as it's not him. So when he came in, he said this about what happened under Obama.
We have to bring back law and order in a place like Chicago, where thousands of people have been killed, thousands over the last number of years. In fact, almost 4,000 have been killed since Barack Obama became president.
That's very neatly done, isn't it?
By choosing the time frame that started when Obama became president and saying, well, this is how many people have died since then, he is kind of implicitly blaming Obama for that crime spree. He didn't actually say it was Obama's fault. No. It is sometimes difficult to follow a Trump sentence through to a conclusion. But
he does heavily imply it, Yeah,
the blame is implied, definitely. And the thing is, what he would actually have noticed if he'd looked at the figures, if he cared, is that when Obama took office, what happened was actually a dramatic reduction in gun deaths in Chicago. So it's all very well just to say the raw figures, but taking them out of context like that, which can be called cherry picking, which we'll talk about in another episode, it doesn't give you the full picture. In Bill Clinton's presidency, for example, there were an average of 769 gun deaths in Chicago per year. In Bush's, there were 533, and in Obama's, 461. So the lowest of those years. But we shouldn't make that same mistake and say it was because of Obama, because it was part of a trend, like the unemployment figures and like the economy. The downward trend in violent crimes basically has continued nationwide since like 1992, which was the most violent year on record according to the FBI crime figures. And since the rise in social media and video games and things that people like to blame violent crime on, violent crime has repeatedly fallen year on year, and the trend continues. As much as they'd like to say, Chicago is like a war zone and it's all everything has gone to hell. Actually, America's a lot safer than it was 20 years ago.
There's also been, 17,000 births, but he doesn't attribute that to Obama. That's right. Or
I mean, that would be excessive to attribute all of them to Obama.
Oh yeah, exactly. But he's somewhat careful to do that. I wouldn't put it past him to actually do that at some stage in the future. Yeah.
And now is the time, I think, for Mark's British Politics Corner.
And I would like to welcome back to the show Boris Johnson. We missed him so, like a hole in the head. And on the same theme of encompassing kind of global trends or encompassing a wide range of things that are going on and embracing that and calling it as a result of the stuff I've been doing. Boris is very good at that too. When he was the London mayor in 2012, he said this about the legacy of the 2012 Olympics.
So you've got all the regeneration benefits flowing into East London, plus the enormous legacy benefits we're seeing in terms of investment around the city. Croydon to Battersea, Crystal Palace, all over the place you're seeing money starting to come in. And that is because of the Olympics.
So Boris is claiming that all of the, in fact, in another report, he referred to them as schemes that have been blocked for decades are now going ahead. So he talked about Croydon, which is in the south of London, almost in the suburbs of South London, nowhere near Stratford in East London, which is where the Olympic Park was built. And the Westfield shopping centre was built next to the Olympic Park. But he attributes all of this spending and all of this investment pouring into these developments in London purely to the Olympics.
Yeah, it's really hard to claim that any kind of regeneration in Croydon is due to the Olympics.
Yeah.
I don't know where he's getting that from.
Yeah,
it's bizarre.
No, well, he's very good at, and in fact, he in the another version of this interview, he said, "I'm not going to sit here and claim that everything is better as a result of the Olympics." And then, of course, he does. He said, "I'm not going to claim that we're doing well in the cricket as a result of the Olympics and that London is just a jolly nice place to be, but I would try and do that." So he's fully aware that of the post hoc ergo propter hoc thing. And in fact, in a speech that he made in February this year, he was berating the ongoing Brexit shenanigans, which is still shenaniganing right up to today. And at that time, he said that the EU are guilty of post hoc ergo propter hoc because the EU say that everything in Britain to do with culture and the city and services and all of that burgeoning progress is as a result of us belonging to the European Union. And he's trying to debunk that. And he's very adept at doing exactly that because he knows exactly what it is, because it's one of his favourite Latin phrases. Because it's what
he does, to be fair, have quite a few favourite Latin phrases.
Yes, he does. Yeah, and a few made up Greek ones as well. Yeah. The other example that I would posit of this being used is in the argument that because of immigration, there aren't many jobs. And this is from Paul Nuttall, who was then a member of UKIP. And he says this.
And I think it's economic madness for our own government to allow this to happen, to allow us to have open borders when 22% of our kids can't get jobs. It doesn't make any economic sense at all.
So he's trying to make the causal connection between open borders and basically it's freedom of movement. One of the pillars of belonging to the European Union was that you would have access to free trade, but in return you would have to allow free movement across borders for people inside the European Union. And Paul Nuttall, who's famously anti-immigrant, making the link between freedom of movement and open borders when 22% of our kids can't get jobs. So he's saying whether this is preventing people from getting jobs because we've got lots of immigrants and open borders, therefore kids can't get jobs. So
the weird thing is, one of the great things about having open borders in the EU is that our 22% of kids who can't get jobs can go and get jobs elsewhere in other countries.
Exactly.
Really easily. They don't have to kind of apply for work visas and things like that in the same way as they would if they were going to Australia or the US. There are jobs elsewhere, there are jobs available, and just like other people are coming and doing jobs here, we can do the same thing. If we shut down the borders, then we are limiting both sides of that.
Yes, exactly.
Not just one side of it. We're not just stopping foreigners coming and getting our jobs.
No, there aren't it's not a limited set of jobs. And in fact, what he's doing is just saying that the only cause pretty much the only cause of our kids not able to get jobs is because these people are coming over here and getting them. He doesn't talk about the fact that there are fewer and fewer jobs, or that the traditional industries where he's from Liverpool, so the traditional industries in the north of England, which were manufacturing industries, have been run down and not invested in over successive governments. So consequently, there are fewer of those kind of jobs available. But he glosses over that, and because it suits him to back up his claim purely on the basis that it's immigration. So we should shut down the borders and prevent our kids who've got no jobs from going somewhere to find a job.
They call it a wild rose, but it's a fallacy. Why they call it, I cannot know. 'Cause it's a fallacy. It's a fallacy. Oh, it's a fallacy.
There you go. Nick Cave and Kylie Minogue there with
it's a long one, that one, isn't it?
Yeah. So when Kylie was being all indie, and Nick Cave with one of his murderous songs right there. Good.
So in the Fallacy in the Wild, we like to talk about the Fallacy of the Week from a non-political perspective. And we have a clip from one of our favourite places to go for examples here.
Look, Rich, my parents bought this fridge just after I was born, okay? Now, I have never had a problem with it. Then you show up and it breaks. What does that tell you?
That refrigerators don't live as long as people?
So it's a great episode with Joey's fridge because he tries to blame everyone for breaking it and tries to get everyone else to pay for it. But he doesn't believe this in this episode that it's because Rachel showed up, then suddenly his fridge breaks, so she must have broken it. But it's just one of the things that he's trying to convince people of. But that's exactly post hoc ergo propter hoc. It's the fridge was fine for like 30 years.
And then you show up.
And then, Rachel came along and now it's broken. So, you know.
But I quite like that. She said, what does that tell you? And then she actually, in a way, quite effectively counters him by just saying, is it that fridges don't live as long as people?
Yeah, so there are ways to point out that actually maybe there's another reason that these things are happening. And so we have another example from Sesame Street.
Ernie, why is that banana still in your ear? Listen, Bert, I use this banana to keep the alligators away. Alligators? Ernie, there are no alligators on Sesame Street. Right. It's doing a good job, isn't it, Bert?
I love that one. That reminds me, my dad would do that when I was asking him about somewhere we were on holiday, and they had, so it must have been on the south coast, and they had those kind of lumps of concrete, which were tank traps to stop tanks trundling up the beach and into the street. And I would say, well, so what are those? And he'd said, oh, they're elephant stops. I said, what do you mean elephant stops? There are no elephants here. He said, yeah, they're doing a good job, aren't they? So
it's a bit of a classic.
Yeah, I was 23 at the time. Yeah, no.
We are, as a species, as we've discussed before, very good at finding patterns. We're good at making links, and sometimes those links are false ones.
And ascribing meaning to it, Yeah,
and that's where superstition comes from. And this is episode 13, so it's very it's a perfect time to be talking about this. And it is where people build up these superstitions because they break a mirror and then something bad happens to them and they think, well, it's because of the mirror. It's because I broke that mirror, or it's because I walked under the ladder, or it's that's why we have those beliefs. And there was a psychologist called B.F. Skinner who did an experiment with pigeons. He did lots of experiments, and he had a Skinner box, which sounds more elaborate than it probably was.
Right.
Just a box.
Sounds a bit more frightening than it. Is.
Yeah. He used the box on various organisms, various animals, to basically remove any other things that might influence them, any stimulus, so that he could introduce a stimulus, and it would be the only one.
Right.
And he put pigeons in his boxes, and he fed them. But what he did was he fed them at just completely random times. So he would put some seed into the kind of a slot in the box, but he would be watching what the pigeons were doing. And what happened pretty quickly was that the pigeons' movements and activity stopped being random.
Right.
When he started putting food in the box, the pigeons, it seems at least, would be trying to look for what had caused the food to come into the box, and would start trying to do the thing that they were doing just before the food came in, so they could try and get more food.
Yeah.
Apparently 75% of the pigeons engaged in this kind of behaviour of doing, standing on one foot or turning round clockwise or whatever it was that they had been doing before the food came in, because they were looking for a pattern, they were looking for a reason, and they didn't just assume that it was random.
Yeah.
And that absolutely describes how we behave in life in general. That's why people have kind of, lucky underwear that they have to wear if their team is playing football.
Yeah.
Because they were wearing it that one time when when there was a big upset, and so that they ascribe it to that. And
and I guess part of it is actually a preparation. I'm just thinking about having worked recently, watching lots of musicians backstage ready to go on. The little routines that they do, where they kind of, will walk around in circles or stand still and look at the ceiling or something like that. And I asked them, do you always do that? He said, yeah, this is what I do before I go on. I think it's because what they're doing is getting in the zone where they will be able to best. So they're transitioning from being backstage to being on stage. So there's that moment that you've got to get into the zone and prepare yourself to perform. So you can't kind of put that into words. So it just becomes about, I need to touch my knees in a certain order, or I need to drink out of this side of this particular cup. So it just becomes ascribed to that physical thing, like putting your socks on in the right order, or wearing lucky underwear. Familiar ritualistic thing.
Those ritualistic things, those superstitions, do seem to be very common among people who perform in some way. People, either sportsmen, very, very common, or actors. People who do have that opportunity to prepare, who have something that they can do before they're actually involved in the activity that matters. And then when they're doing the activity that matters, it's all about the activity. It's all about, trying to do your best at that. You don't have time for the rituals then. But the rituals can happen beforehand, and they can prepare like that. Sometimes, often, in fact, those two things, the thing we assume is a cause and the thing that we assume it caused, are completely unrelated. And, there are times when you can really see why you would think there would be a connection. But I strongly recommend everyone go to a site called Spurious Correlations, because there's a guy who has created lots of data sets of various different things, of kind of precipitation in various states, and a number of people who died falling down the stairs, and number of films Nicolas Cage was in a given year, and the age of Miss America and stuff like that. And graphed them all. And you can go through and you can choose a variable and see what it correlates with. And I think there's one, people falling out of a wheelchair. Correlates very strongly with the price of mayonnaise or something like that. It's really ridiculous, but it points this out. It kind of shows you how these things, and some of the correlations are quite, you can look at the graph and it really looks like the two things are doing the same thing. Like there must be some causal link between them, or third cause that causes them both. But obviously they're not. They're totally unrelated. They just happen. When you look at so many different variables, there are, just by coincidence, going to be things that follow the same path.
And so I'm just looking at one of them now, and it's the Japanese passenger cars sold in the US correlates with suicides by crashing of motor vehicle. almost exactly. And you look at it, and the reason that one came to mind, I was thinking that's the kind of thing Trump would use. He would look at that, and he'd go, and he would make the join. Because he's not got the sense to be able to not make the join. We should increase the tariff
not allow Japanese
on importing
cars. Yeah, absolutely.
in order to reduce the number of suicides. He would just do that.
It just makes sense.
Yeah.
So we're gonna play fake news, folks. I love the game. It's a great game. I understand the game as well as anybody.
Yes, it's time for Fake News, the game where I read out 3 Trump quotes, 2 of which are real and 1 I made up, and Mark has to figure out which one is fake news.
Or fail to, yeah.
Well, you're currently at 18%.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
So
ever since we've
that's
started
this... That's not terrible.
So ever since we started this entire series, I've gone up to 18%.
Yeah.
There you go. That's a positive growth over the period.
Yeah, because you were at 0 when we started.
Exactly. So, yeah. I'm responsible for an 18% growth. Yeah.
Yeah, and you have the opportunity, if you get this right, to go up to 25%.
Yeah. The value of where it is. The value of winnings may go up as well as down. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So the theme this week is just really kind of what the fuck things that Trump has said.
Okay.
Just things you can't quite really understand, even in context. So, number 1 is he's pointing at the press and he says,
right,
even one of them recently said that President Trump made promises, but he's kept many more promises. I mean, far more than I made. Think of it. It's true.
Okay. Okay.
Number 2, talking about the Washington Post sources.
Yeah.
He said, frankly, I don't believe these people exist. Some of them might exist, and if they do, that's okay. But the ones that don't, they don't give their names. Or is it number 3, which was about getting rid of borders, like Democrats wanting to have completely open borders. He said, oh, that's great. That's what we want. Let those people pour right in, folks. Let them come enjoy you on your front lawn.
Well, you're right. You just want to go...
He actually said 2 of these things.
You just want to go, what the fuck? Yeah. Okay, well, I think I love that first one. He's kept... think of it. It's true. It's true, he's saying. It's true that I've kept more promises than I've made. So it starts with... So what is he doing? Think of it. It's true. Well, if you think of it, it can't possibly be true. Except I think he did say that. I think that one is true. Okay, so number 2, frankly, I don't believe these people exist. Some of them might exist, and if they do, that's okay. But the ones that don't, they do give the names. What? That's not quite. That's variation on Rumsfeld's unknown unknowns, isn't it? Okay, that's great. That's what we want. Those people pour right in, folks. Let them come enjoy you on your front lawn. What? Okay. Right. I think they're all just as preposterous as each other. So, see, I really want him to have said number 1. Okay, I think number 3. Okay, I think number 2 you made up.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you think number 1 is real?
I do.
You think he really said that? Number 1 is real.
Oh, my God.
Even one of them recently said that President Trump made promises, but he's kept many more promises. I mean, far more than I made. Think of it. It's true.
What? It's what? I mean, what? So is he doing that because he's having a go at the press for being wrong? It's saying, this is how what the hell?
Even the haters and losers agree that I've kept more promises than I made. That's what he's saying. It's like,
but think of it. Yeah. It's true. What? I mean, far more than I made.
Don't think of it, though. Don't think too hard.
No, you can't, because it's just the fact that, what? No. Okay.
So you also think number
Right.
3 is real?
I do.
And number 3 is real.
Oh, that's great. That's what we want. Let those people pour right in, folks. Let them come enjoy you on your front lawn.
What is he saying? So, is he saying that in answer to somebody?
No.
Because there's a big booing crowd going
No, he was making up stuff about Andrew Gillum, the Florida governor candidate, and saying that he has signed a Democrat bill that allows for completely open borders, which is obviously nonsense. He hasn't done that. But he's basically saying Gillum is in favour of totally open borders, and if that happens, then people will come and enjoy you on your front lawn.
Even if you don't have one.
Yeah.
Let them pour right in.
Even if you're not a particularly enjoyable person.
No, that's right. Yeah. So what? It's just, oh no, it's just appalling nonsense, isn't it?
That means
I've won.
That you have won.
Hey!
Fake news.
All righty.
So you are now officially up to 25%.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And great. I do like the middle one. That's very good. The ones, because it's just perfectly right. I mean, in this kind of crazy, out of context nonsense, you could write anything. And you did. And it was perfectly feasible that he could have said that.
It's actually pretty hard to come up with something as insane.
I know.
As some of the stuff that he says. So podcast listeners, I need your help for that. I need your help to full mark. If you think you can make up a convincing fake Trump quote, then share this episode on Twitter, include your quote and the hashtag Fallacious Trump. I'll pick the best one and you'll be podcast famous. So it's time for the part of the episode that this week at least is called Incompetence is Not a Logical Fallacy. Because this is the part of the show where we want to talk about all of the crazy stuff that happens in the White House and around Trump, but we have to pick one story. And this week, as promised last time, it is the Jacob Wohl, Jack Burkman attempt to smear Robert Mueller.
Yeah. Was it? Yeah. Attempt. I think that's. Yeah. I think that kind of ascribes it much more importance than it warrants. Yeah. What the hell?
It was an amazing, impressive thing. It started in the middle of October when journalists started getting emails from a woman called Lorraine Parsons, who claimed that she had been phoned up, in fact, by someone who was working for Jack Burkman, who's a DC lobbyist, a kind of very much pro-Trump lobbyist, and had been offered money to claim that Mueller had assaulted her. She said in the email that she worked at a law firm where Mueller worked in the 70s. She had got texts and emails from this person, and that they had got her to download a particular app so that they could speak to her confidentially, and then offered her money and said that they would pay off her credit card debt of about $34,000 and also pay her $20,000 on top of that to make these claims.
Right.
Now, this is a bit weird because the law firm that she mentioned said that they'd never had anyone called Lorraine working during that period.
Oh.
And journalists' attempts to track this person down resulted in basically no one being able to, and several journalists decided that probably she doesn't exist and weren't sure exactly what was going on with this. It is quite strange. It's possible that this is a real person and she used a fake name when she was emailing journalists. That is possible, and that would obviously make it harder to identify her. And the FBI may end up being able to do that if she does exist at all. One thing that did happen, though, is the Krasenstein brothers, who run Hill Reporter, got involved in this, and they contacted Jack Burkman, and they had a call from the person who had supposedly been calling Lorraine Parsons from the same number that she had given them,
right,
to say, basically, back off, stop investigating this, you're in over your head.
Oh, right.
They then Yeah, so it seems like maybe it's not nothing. That and they also got a contact from a person who claimed he worked for Surefire Intelligence, which is an intelligence firm, as far as they were concerned at the time, who was also saying, basically, you need to stop this, you're in over your head.
Right.
So that was the first mention of Surefire Intelligence in this whole thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, a woman called Jennifer Taub, who actually does exist, she's a Vermont law professor, she also approached the FBI with information that she had been approached by a company called Surefire Intelligence and offered money to suggest that Robert Mueller had harassed her or assaulted her in some way.
Yeah.
The thing about her is she's actually never met Robert Mueller. She has appeared on CNN, I think, talking about the Mueller investigation because she's a law professor, but she hasn't actually had any contact with him. But again, Surefire Intelligence came up in the communications that she had. So at that point, it seemed like maybe someone was trying to find someone who would say something about Mueller, and that was referred to the FBI for investigation.
Right.
Because that's what you do when someone makes an accusation like that about you. And especially, and when you are high up in that kind of area,
the FBI,
you don't just go, no, I didn't do it, and I don't want the FBI looking into it. You say, FBI, look into it. Look into this. Investigate it. I've got nothing to hide.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's what Mueller did. Now, on October 29th, a pro-Trump Twitter troll, I guess, called Jacob Wohl, he sent a tweet that he had had several media sources tell him that a scandalous story about Mueller would be breaking the following day.
That's a very Trump phrase, isn't it?
Yes.
Many people have said,
should be interesting, he said.
Right.
Suggesting, obviously, that it's nothing to do with him.
Yeah.
He's saying, the media sources are telling me this is going to happen. The following day, Jack Burkman, the lobbyist, tweeted some sad news. On Thursday, November 1st, at the Roslyn Holiday Inn at noon, we will reveal the first of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's sex assault victims. I applaud the courage and dignity and grace and strength of my client.
Right.
So he's claiming that he has someone who's going to come forward and accuse Mueller of sexual assault.
On that date?
Yes.
Okay. Right.
Yes, on the 1st of November. So
right. In person.
Yeah, absolutely. And soon after that, right-wing website Gateway Pundit posted an article, and in fact a document, that laid out the accusation against Mueller. Heavily redacted, but still with a lot of details in it.
Right.
Now, Jacob Wohl, the guy who said, media sources tell me there's going to be a breaking story, he writes for Gateway Pundit, or he used to. And so people started asking him questions about, because that apparently they don't always put bylines on their stories, so it wasn't clear that it was definitely him. But since he had been the first to say this was coming out, people started contacting him and seeing if he had any connection to it. The document appeared to be from Surefire Intelligence,
right?
Which the name having come up a couple of times,
come up again,
and so journalists, as they do, started looking into it, and this is where it gets just brilliant.
Right.
Because Surefire Intelligence has a website, and to that extent is real, but in no other way is real, because they have a non-existent DC address. It's a suite in a building. The suite doesn't exist.
Right.
The domain of the website is registered to Jacob Wohl. He claimed to NBC and Daily Beast that he had no connection to Surefire Intelligence. He knew nothing about it. As far as he was concerned, Jack Burkman had hired them to vet the accuser's story.
Okay.
And that was all he knew about it. He'd never heard of them other than that.
Never heard of Surefire. Right.
Never heard of Surefire, no.
Owning the
domain was registered to his email address. It turned out the phone number on the website went to a voicemail, which referred people to another phone number, which was Jacob Wohl's mum's phone.
No, Jacob's not here at the moment. Can I take a message for him or anything to do with Surefire?
Yeah, he's 20, by the way. I don't know if I've mentioned that he's quite young. So I don't know if he still lives with his mum. So when people started trying to call Surefire, they actually got Jacob Wohl's mum, who's not happy, apparently.
He's left his laundry and he's still got things in the loft.
Surefire has a LinkedIn page, and they had a number of employees, as large investigative companies would do. International employees, actually. Investigators and financial consultants and people like that all over the world. Weird thing is that the CEO is a guy called Matthew Cohen. And his image on LinkedIn was of a kind of a silhouette, a dark person in front of a bright window. But when you lighten that image up a bit, it's identical to pictures of Jacob Wohl.
How bizarre.
Which is very strange.
So it's him.
Using a fake name. As running the company.
Right, okay. Which he said he doesn't know anything about.
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
The thing is, the other employees on LinkedIn... Yeah. It seems just like Jacob Wohl doesn't know that you can do a Whois search and find out who runs a website. He also apparently has never heard of Google reverse image search.
Okay.
Because the other employees of the company were famous people, mostly.
Oh, no.
Not even. Some of them were stock photo models.
Okay.
But there was the Israeli supermodel Bar Raffaeli, who used to go out with Leonardo DiCaprio. She's one of their investigators, apparently. Sigourney Weaver's husband, the head of the financial group in Zurich, is actor Christoph Waltz.
Oh, wow.
From Inglourious Bastards.
Is that when he's not busy, he does that
apparently,
as well? Or...
Yeah, although he's under the name Simon Frick on the
right, well,
on the LinkedIn
obviously for tax reasons. Yeah.
I mean, just do a basic thing look on Twitter for a picture of someone, any random person who's has no followers and no one's going to be able to say who they are. But Christoph fucking Waltz. He was in Django Unchained and Bond. He's Blofeld.
Even if you did take a picture of somebody from Twitter, it's on the internet.
Oh, it's still absolutely.
So it would be found. You'd have to take a picture of your friend. Who hasn't got a Facebook
that would be fine.
account.
Do that, but
your mum.
It took no time at all, basically, to find that Surefire Intelligence was just a nonsense company. It was incorporated in Delaware during October, so 3 weeks before this whole thing broke. But all credit to Jack Burkman and Jacob Wohl. They knew this had happened. They knew that everyone had found out how ridiculous this was. It was all over the internet, and yet still on the 1st of November they turned up.
Oh, so this was before
to the
press
holiday inn in
conference.
Roslin.
No
for the press conference, for the promised press conference.
Oh my god! Yeah,
the
person that they were going to
in their hotel room, and they put on their clothes and went to the press conference. Jack Burkman didn't do up his fly, unfortunately, but they mostly dressed themselves. They mostly dressed themselves and got to the press conference and stood up and still carried on with the whole charade. So it was pretty amazing. Burkman has a history with press conferences. He claimed previously that he had evidence that Seth Rich, the Democratic staffer who was murdered, was killed by the Clintons, basically, or by someone related to the Clintons, and he claimed that he had someone who would come forward, like a kind of an informant, who would say what evidence they had. They didn't show up to the press conference when he had it, and that wasn't the first time that had happened. And the accuser, in this case, also didn't show up to the press conference.
Was there any reason for that?
They claimed that she had landed in DC and then freaked out. She'd had death threats, apparently. She was worried for her life and got onto another plane, because you can do that at airports. You can just, it's like a bus station. You can just jump on a plane and went somewhere else.
Yeah.
And,
like you can in the movies.
Yeah. But although she was afraid for her life, and I don't quite know how she could have been having death threats, because no one at this point knew who she was. But during the press conference, they gave her name and the fact that she was a fashion designer in LA and her age and various other things that would make her very, very easy to track down.
Trace.
So weird that she couldn't appear, but was perfectly happy to have all that information given out.
Well, yeah, yeah. Well, perhaps people had left death threats with Jacob Wohl's mum. They just
maybe
left a message
on the voicemail.
Yeah. So it's written on a note on the fridge for when Jacob came in. Signed your mum.
So at the press conference, having previously claimed that the accuser was a client of Jack Burkman's and Surefire Intelligence had
picked
been
up the investigation
hired by him to vet her story, they then said that actually she had come to Surefire Intelligence in February of that year on an estate matter to have a dishonest accountant looked into.
Right. Like
odd, really. Given that the company didn't exist at that point.
This is 8 months before it was even founded.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one of the journalists did ask how she found Jacob Wohl, who was now admitting that he ran Surefire Intelligence. He said that it was important that he maintained anonymity because the investigation was in flux. It was important that until they held a press conference in front of lots of press, that nobody knew he was involved.
Yeah.
So
it would give the game away. Yeah.
Yeah. So at that point, the journalist did ask him how Caroline Cass, who is the named woman, found them, and he said he thought it was probably on Craig's list or Angie's list, because that's how you look for an investigator, isn't it? Or a lawyer or some kind of firm like that.
Right.
Apparently, they dealt with her other issue, and that was all fine.
Yeah.
And then September 15th, she saw for the first time, apparently, Robert Mueller on TV.
Oh, okay.
And noticed that was the guy who back in 2010 had raped her, because she's not into politics. No. She doesn't watch TV. She doesn't have a TV, so she'd never seen him before.
Never seen it before. So the fact that she could find out the investigators on Craigslist would mean that you're on the internet. And the internet being what it is,
information about Mueller on the internet.
No. Okay. No. He's a complete unknown.
He's only on TV.
Yeah.
So if you don't watch TV,
mistake.
How would you know who he is?
No, quite. Yeah.
I
mean, well, obviously she doesn't go to the movies either. Otherwise, she would have noticed that Christoph Waltz was the financial controller. No, fair enough.
So apparently, and on seeing Robert Mueller, she went immediately straight back to Surefire Intelligence, which now had both a company and a website. Not
just a Craigslist entry,
So Jacob Wohl, in his vast investigative experience, decided that he would look into this for her.
Yeah.
He claimed that he was immediately sceptical and thought it would just be something that he would look into and dismiss within a few minutes because he has a policy of never believing women.
Okay. Okay.
He said that.
He's not Trump's son, is he, or something? He's not actually.
I think both of them would probably like that.
Yeah.
If they could move Eric aside and make a vacancy, I think they'd both be quite happy.
I think Trump has only adopted Eric in order to, move the entire world's attention away from his real son, Jacob Wohl.
So, based on his policy of not believing women, he approached this very sceptically. But one thing apparently they didn't necessarily notice, at least early enough to change their story, was that when she said that she was in New York City with Robert Mueller raping her, Mueller was actually doing jury duty in DC.
Okay.
And he was written about by the Washington Post. They had a story about how someone had spotted Robert Mueller actually getting to the point of voir dire before he was dismissed from the jury. So the evidence that Burkman and Wohl presented that he was in New York was that he had taken part in a cyber conference that ran from August 2nd to August 5th. They claimed this happened on or around August 2nd, which was when he was doing jury duty. He did a speech on August 5th in New York, so arguably they could say that on or around August 2nd includes that. So yeah, fair enough. He was in New York around that time. That was public available information before they made the accusation, so doesn't necessarily preclude the possibility that they may have said, well, we have evidence he was in New York at that time.
Yeah.
Let's accuse him of something in New York at that time.
Right.
And so having laid out all of this amazing evidence, the journalists then started asking their questions, which involved things like,
which you would.
Given that you're 20, how can you explain your investigative experience?
And didn't Burkman kind of say he's a genius? And
he said you shouldn't be fooled by his age. He is a child prodigy who has eclipsed Mozart in his achievements.
Wow.
So
okay, in what regard? Yeah, that's right. If Mozart was around
maybe
today, he would be, in awe of
probably
the fact
a better
that this
driver
guy,
than Mozart, maybe.
Yeah, he's better at registering websites than Mozart ever was.
Just marginally, though.
Yeah. True.
Not a lot. Burkman also said that Wohl had an honorary Harvard law degree.
Okay.
And then a journalist said, "Explain how you got this honorary Harvard law degree."
Yeah.
And they both went, "Oh, it's just a figure of speech."
Oh, right.
Because I say that all the time.
Yeah.
That's a thing I say, along with monkey this up. It's just something that you just kind of, just talk about your honorary Harvard law degree.
Is the problem actually that living in a cyber world, living in do people say cyber world anymore? Living on the
information superhighway, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, on the information superhighway. Living in that world, and they think that all we need to do is troll people, and they will buy into that. And we all I need to do is put out a trolling tweet, and I'll get 400,000 followers agreeing with me. So did they think, well, this is going to be easy because in the real world, it can't be as sophisticated as it is on Twitter. We will get away with this.
It seems like they saw the Kavanaugh hearings and thought, well, obviously that's a conspiracy. That has been made up. We can do that. That's easy.
Yeah, all we need to do, because I'm a genius when it comes to making websites and all that. Better than Mozart.
Grabbing pictures from LinkedIn than Mozart.
Yeah, than Mozart ever was. Yeah, he was rubbish at it. Yeah.
The best question, however, came right towards the end of the press conference, which was, "Are you two prepared for federal prison?" To which they said, "No, we're not."
Well, wow, what the hell did they...
The world that these people live in, most of the people that they're talking to don't ever check anything. So you kind of get used to that. And you start to embellish a bit and people just accept it and go, "Oh, yeah, fair enough."
And then build on it and build on it.
Then,
exactly.
And then when you're suddenly confronted with people who actually, phone the number on your website or look it up at all.
It's quite heartening in a way that this translation from the online echo chamber into real life, it just stops. It just pulls the rug out from under that.
Well, that's the thing. It's
really quite
that
heartening.
all of the people who are claiming that, the Kavanaugh thing, that Christine Ford was a conspiracy, was set up. This is what a setup looks like. This is what it looks like when people try to make something up. It looks stupid because it's not real, and people make mistakes, and the kinds of people who think they can get away with something like this are just idiots. So this is what it looks like when someone is conspiring to try and smear someone.
I find it very uplifting that when you take more trolls into the real world, they just wither in the light. In the face of people that don't go to Twitter as their news feed, that don't go to Trump for the final word on everything.
It is a mystery what they were expecting when they showed up at the press conference.
Yeah. So what's the latest on them? Are they banged up in jail?
As far as we know, the FBI are looking into it. They have not said anything further. They promised as they were leaving that they would produce the accuser for another press conference at a later date, but nothing further has at the moment.
Yeah.
So
that press conference may be behind bars. Yeah. What the hell? That's so good, isn't it? Meanwhile, it's an abject lesson in, not taking on the adults of the world, guys. So, finally, some things we really don't have time to talk about.
There was an election recently. Don't know if you caught that. Despite Trump's claim that the result was very close to complete victory for the GOP, in fact, the Democrats had their best midterms since Watergate. picking up at least 34 House seats and flipping at least 7 governors' mansions to blue.
Victories included the first 2 Muslim women elected to Congress,
the first 2 Native American women elected to Congress,
the first openly gay governor, the first openly bisexual senator,
and the most women and people of colour ever to serve in the House.
Best of all, though, Wisconsin's Republican Governor Scott Walker lost by 1.2% to Tony Evers and was prevented from asking for a recount by a law that he signed in 2016 restricting the criteria for recounts. Also, we can confirm that Dennis Hoff, the brothel owner who died last month and who we mentioned in episode 11, defeated Democratic educator Licia Romanoff on Tuesday in the race for Nevada's 36th Assembly District. County officials will appoint a Republican to take his place in the seat. As NBC News' website pointed out, the 36th is a sprawling assembly district that touches both California and Utah and includes the Nevada National Security Site where nuclear weapons were once tested. Far be it from me to go all post-hoc fallacy, but that probably explains it.
Some races are still undecided, with recounts, postal ballots and provisional ballots still being counted in some very close elections. And Republicans are suing to get vote counting stopped in Utah and Florida, and claiming in many places that continuing to count votes amounts to election fraud. Trump called for Florida to go with the election night tally, ignoring all postal votes, including those of US servicemen overseas. But other than that, I'm sure he hasn't disrespected veterans at all this week.
Well, you say that, but there was this one thing where he went to France for the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I and cancelled a trip to a military cemetery because it was raining. And then a couple of days later, he cancelled a trip to Arlington National Cemetery on Veterans Day because it was raining again. Look, never mind bullets in Dieppe, Monsieur Macron. Do you know how expensive Donny's hair is?
While in France, Trump did get a chance to see his old friend Vladimir Putin, but then Macron had the seating arrangement changed so that Trump and Putin weren't sitting together at dinner. Now, my wife is a teacher, and she does tell me that sometimes you have to separate naughty children to stop them colluding.
Yeah, no collusion, no collusion. Even Fox News are in support of CNN suing Trump over the White House suspending journalist Jim Acosta's press access. Acosta asked Trump a pertinent question, but an intern tried to take the microphone from him when he followed up by kind of asking that the president actually answer the question rather than bluster some baloney. Sarah Huckabee Sanders later claimed Acosta put his hands on the intern. And to prove it, the White House put out a doctored version of a clip from the news coverage, readily detectable as doctored because it had already gone out live. Their clip accentuated the immense karate chop that Acosta clearly inflicted on the intern. Bruce Lee is suing from beyond the grave for the use of an overblown yelping sound effect from Enter the Dragon. But there's no truth in the rumour that Trump is suing Sanders for breach of the copyright that he holds for putting hands on women.
Mitch McConnell, a man who was clearly in a teleporter accident involving a turtle and a giant bag of hypocrisy, wrote an op-ed for Fox News asking, will Dems work with us or simply put partisan politics ahead of the country? Twitter users promptly trampled each other to death in the rush to be the first to yell, Merrick Garland!
In unexpectedly, regretfully and voluntarily stepping down from the post of Attorney General, Jeff Sessions wrote, Dear Mr. President, at your request, I am submitting my resignation. Whilst there's really no need to ask why Trump fired him, perhaps Sessions himself summed it up as he continued in his letter, most importantly, in my time as Attorney General, we have restored and upheld the rule of law. Sorry, Jeff, with an appalling attitude like that, you just got to go.
Before we wrap up tonight, there's just time to reveal the winner of the competition that's been running in our Facebook group. The winner of various ebooks, audio prizes and this here shout-out is the brilliantly named Richard Thunder Hopkins.
Congratulations, Richard. Not least on your name. And the most important of all, the many fabulous prizes Richard won was the chance to choose which logical fallacy we talk about next time. So thanks to Richard, in 2 weeks' time, we'll be breaking down the hasty generalization fallacy, which, of course, is clearly the choice every fallacious Trump listener would have made.
Yeah, excellent choice. So that's all the bad arguments and faulty reasoning we have time for this episode. If you hear Trump saying something stupid and wonder if it's a fallacy, find us on Twitter at Fallacious Trump or email us on pod@fallacioustrump.com. Yes, that's a new email address, and the new website will be coming soon.
Woo-hoo. If you think we've used a fallacy ourselves, let us know. And if you've had a good time, please give us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can support the show on our Patreon page at patreon.com/ftrump.
And you can connect with us and other listeners in the aforementioned Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/fallacioustrump, where we'll post some links to stuff we've talked about.
All music is by The Outbursts and was used with permission. So until next time on Fallacious Trump, we'll leave the last word to the Donald.
That's right. Go home to mommy. Bye. Bye.